Ladies, the Women's World Cup starts in 3 days. We have to get immediately into the expectations of this U.S. women's national team. That's the biggest thing on everyone's mind. Jordan, start with you.
It's perfect timing, too, to launch this right now because the Women's World Cup is happening and the U.S. team is trying to go three-peat. It would be the first team to ever go 3 championships in a row when you talk about World Cup. And that's the expectation for this team. It is to win the World Cup. You've seen it in the commercials they've put out that have been on the edge of overconfident.
And I would go further than that.
Yeah.
Typical U.S.
But I think that this team, it is an external factor that now the United States as a whole expects them to win. But also internally, this team is driven like no other team you have ever been a part of. You go into camp with them and you are immediately hit with every single thing matters. Every detail matters. And so that is built into what this team wants. I think the big question is going to be, how are they going to handle this stage when it comes to adaptation of tactics? Because we know that this U.S. team likes to play fast. They like to get in behind. They like to get aggressive at teams when it comes to their style of play. But what if a team sits in a low block? They've struggled with that a number of times over the last year and a half under Vlatko Andonovski. So they're going to have to make some of those decisions on the fly. And I think that with the expectation to win the World Cup is going to be a big question for this squad. How do they adapt?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think having Vlatko as a coach and seeing how he tactically picked the team and the squad he's assembled, I can see with the really young players that they brought in or the people that are debuting with their first World Cup is to have those work on that tactical adaptation with these forwards that are 1v1 specialists and incredible finishers and bring immense defensive work, I think, too, is something that is going to be really refreshing and help them with, subs and tactical lineups and how they're going to break these teams down. That you're right, will sit in a low block because the U.S. is going to come out guns a-blazing, attacking heavy, super direct. And I just think that's going to help them beat these teams that will have that awareness and hopefully get the dubs.
14 new players.
14, there's 14 of them.
That have never played in the World Cup before.
And it's two sides to that coin, right? It provides a lot of freshness to this team and what they can bring out for it. But Darian, you're talking about the forwards that are young on this squad and what they can do. I think a big question mark comes down to the defense. You look at the center backs that Vlatko Andonovski has brought in. Only 3 of them. The 2 that will most likely get the starting nod, Alana Cook and Naomi Girma, they've only started 3 times together in 2023. They do have collegiate career to lean back on. 22 games together as a center back pairing in Stanford in 2018. But it is a new and a fresh back line that is going to have to immediately have cohesiveness heading into this World Cup. And if you're opposition, you're looking at that back line and saying, hey, I'm attacking those new young players. Crystal Dunn, the only veteran on that back 4 line for the United States.
I would argue that Naomi Girma, and I have been arguing this on Morning Footy, that she has leadership capability and the way that she can lead that back line, whether or not she has the veteran experience in a World Cup, we've seen across her career, especially during the W Championship that CBS also covered. I was on the ground there, and she was alongside Becky Sauerbrunn for a lot of those games, but you could see that she has that persona. We as players are very familiar with the personality that is a leader, and she has that. So rest assured, we know that there are young players on the defensive side, and that's something to keep an eye on. But Darian, you were talking about the attackers, the new attackers, and what they are formatting there. Yeah,
I think it's going to be exciting. You see so many 1v1 specialists. They're super aggressive going forward, loving to combine, taking shots that I don't think we typically see from players this young, and just the utmost confidence going into this. And I think the squad that he's assembled on the front line has really hit. Everybody's kind of in the zone right now. Everybody's scoring goals. Everybody's having a great NWSL season. And so it's going to be exciting to see really what they do and hit this sweet spot going into the tournament, because especially when you're debuting, you have nothing to lose. You're just going out to have fun. I think it's a little, you can take it both ways, but I think it's a little less pressure. You can just go out and really perform and be creative and go to score some goals. That's the mindset you have to have.
I think Sophia Smith has been on fire, 10 goals in NWSL play, so she's coming in on fire. I think it was really important for Trinity Rodman to get those goals against Wales, because she's had a little bit of an up and down NWSL season. There's a lot of expectations on her, not only because of her last name and what she represents for sports in the United States, but because she has shown the wealth of knowledge she has on both sides of the ball.
Absolutely.
But number one, you have to put the ball in the back of the net. If you're a forward, you know that very well. So I think that was such a confidence boost going into the World Cup that Rodman got on the score sheet.
Yeah, against Wales, Rodman got 2. She came on at halftime, though. And I think throughout this World Cup for the United States, a theme is going to be substitutes for them because of the tactical breakdown that, Jordan, you brought up as maybe a blockage for them to meet those expectations of winning the World Cup. It comes down to the substitutes on the field, because if they can talk tactics on the sideline with their coaching staff and look at the iPad, look at the plays, and then sub onto the pitch, I think that's where we're going to see the U.S. lean a lot on their tactical awareness to break down opposition.
I think that's an incredibly interesting point, because after that Wales match, I was thinking, well, I think Trinity Rodman won the starting spot from here on out over Alyssa Thompson. But then you go to question, was that part of the game plan? Is that something that Vlatko's looking for Alyssa to run the defenders a bit and then bring in Trinity Rodman with her clinicalness on that front foot?
I think that one of the most interesting things about the United States women's team is they play a lot of games. So there's a lot of tape on them. Whereas other countries don't play as many games. So they can bring in nuances that you've never seen before. So I think you're right on that, Jenny. Maybe Alyssa Thompson gets the start to just say, okay, one, give this young 18-year-old who just graduated high school some confidence.
Like a week ago.
Just turned in her final paper. Confidence that she fits in here and she belongs here. But I also think that that's maybe not the exact starting lineup that we're going to see.
No.
If Rose Lavelle's
healthy,
if Rose Lavelle's healthy, I don't know. Maybe you get her some starting minutes in the first game, because there's a little, it's going to be a little less of it's still going to be an intense game, but it's not going to be the Netherlands like you're playing later in the group. It'll be interesting what Vlatko implements right away, but I think they have to be willing to be adaptable in moments. That's going to be really key for this team.
One of the bigger things is we've talked about the young players and how many of them are brought onto the fold, but let's talk about that veteran experience, Lisa, that is already on this team.
Yeah, when you look at the veterans on this roster, I mean, I think all eyes point to Megan Rapinoe. She's announced that this is her last World Cup, but this will be also her 4th World Cup. Alex Morgan, you look at Alyssa Nair in goal as well, Kelly O'Hara. There's a number of players that are going to lead this team in their veteran abilities. Alex Morgan named one of the co-captains of this squad. She's worn the captain's band a number of times, but it's going to be a different role for these veterans and these players. And when you look at the breakdown of the roster with 14 players headed to their first World Cup and 9 that are returning, that's very uneven. And those veterans are going to have to use their experience from before, the adversity they went through, not just in former World Cups, but you look back to the Olympics in 2021, there was a lot of adversity thrown at this team. How can they transition that to these 14 new players headed to an international tournament and the World Cup, and kind of protect them a little bit from the things that are going to be thrown at them, but also prepare them for all the pressure, because as the #1 team in the FIFA rankings and the expectation to win it, there's the biggest target on the United States' back, and these players have to be ready for that.
There we see the group stages where the U.S. women's national team starts their World Cup against Vietnam. They also have Netherlands, as Jordan mentioned earlier, and then Portugal to finish off that group stage. Ladies, this is incredible that we have so much to say, and I'm sure that we can continue to go on and on and on about this topic. But when we talk about the U.S. having so many new players, obviously we have to talk about the format of the tournament. There is now 32 teams in this tournament as opposed to the previous 24 teams. So while the U.S. has many players that don't have that much experience on this World Cup stage, a lot of them have played in youth World Cups. That's one thing to mention. But the people that they're playing against have never played an international tournament at this level. So something to keep an eye on, and there's so much at stake here for everybody involved. But don't go anywhere, because we have so much more for you after this break.